Cody Brown finally uttered the words nobody believed he ever would, and everything changed. Robyn was told to pack her bags, the children made their voices heard, and the wives drew a line in the sand. What actually shattered the Brown family wasn't drama. It was denial, heartbreak, and all those years of unspoken resentment finally boiling over. You won't believe how it went down. Watch now. It wasn't another tears, turned, banter, goodbye. It was the moment Cody Brown finally took a glance around and understood the home he struggled so desperately to construct had already fallen apart around him. On the quiet mornings of Flagstaff's desert landscape, when the sky becomes that soft pink before the sun rises, the Brown family had once found solace in common fantasies. A large house, a large family, abundant love. But what happens when those dreams start turning into regrets? This isn't the kind of story that hits all at once. No single event caused the unraveling. It was quieter than that, slower. 1,000 small choices that turned one man. Vision of unity into a broken circle of silence, distance, and sorrow. Now Cody's confronted with something he never imagined. A family so torn apart some of the pieces may never be whole again. And at the center of it all, Robyn. And a question he's evaded for so long. What if the woman he thought would bring peace actually ended up being the wedge that pushed everyone further away? You know, when Sister Wives first aired, many of us watched with curiosity, even a bit of wonder. How could one man possibly balance 4 wives, nearly 20 kids, and a household built on faith and fairness? It didn't take long before that curiosity turned into concern. Because even through the screen, something always felt off. There was the unspoken heartache of Christine. Janelle's endurance tried again and again. The isolation of Meri you could witness right before your eyes, and then Robyn, the new wife, the favorite, the woman whose entrance altered the whole dynamic like the approach of a storm brewing on the horizon. But for years, Cody refused to see what the rest of us did, that his universe had tilted her way, and everyone else was clinging for equilibrium. Now, at last, the repercussions have arrived, and what began as whispers within the family has escalated to outright confrontation. Robyn and her children, the core of Cody's universe, have been requested to vacate the premises, not in wrath, not in animosity, but with a sort of exhausted sorrow that comes when love has exhausted its excuses. And Cody, he's no longer in revolt. He's not yelling, he's not pointing. He's just exhausted. A man standing at the edge of the land that was once his future and wondering if it ever was really his at all. Have you ever chosen something you believed was right, perhaps even beautiful, only to see it destroy everything else you loved? It's a cruel reality, one that age and hindsight bring. We don't always know what we are paying for our devotion until it's impossible to go back. And for Cody Brown, that cost his marriage to Christine, his relationship with Janelle, the silent strength Meri exhibited, even as she continued to recede from the public eye, and most agonizing, his own children's trust, many of whom now address him with coolness rather than affection. But here's the thing. This is not a tale of vengeance or retribution. It's something softer, something truer. It's about what happens when a family finally drops the act, when years of pain are no longer pushed under the table, when tears are no longer swatted away, when the people who gave you their everything say they've given enough. We'll discuss Robyn's departure and what ultimately convinced Cody to ask her to leave. We'll walk through the quiet, powerful moments when Janelle and Meri said no for the first time in a long time. We'll hear from the children, some angry, some heartbroken, all shaped by the choices their parents made in the name of love. And yes, we'll talk about Brenna, Robyn's daughter, who found herself crying on camera, and crying in the headlines in a way that stirred deep debate. Was she a victim of this family's dysfunction, or simply a mirror of the mother who raised her? There are no easy answers, but there is a story worth telling, because behind the headlines, beyond the reality TV drama, there's a lesson many of us know all too well. Families don't fall apart overnight. They fade, a fracture, and sometimes, if you're lucky, find a way to heal. So let's sit down together, just us, and walk through what really happened when Cody's world turned upside down. From the moment he finally saw Robyn for who she was, to the quiet strength of the wives who stepped away, to the tears of a daughter attempting to defend a mother who could not defend herself. This is not merely a sister wives story. This is a story about losing your way and attempting to find your way back, even when it is too late to turn back to the way it used to be. Let's start. The quiet streets of Flagstaff had never been so noisy. Spurs circulated through neighborhoods, tension hanging heavy in the air. It wasn't gossip any longer. It was confirmation. Robyn Brown, Cody's former beloved fourth wife, and her children were no longer welcome in the home they'd shared with him. Not politely nudged, not asked either, told to go. After years of escalating tension, shattered trust, and increasing distance, Cody finally acknowledged what everybody had long suspected, what his other wives, his children, and even the staunchest fans knew was coming. Robyn hadn't merely caused trouble, she'd dismantled the family. But let there be no mistake, it was not some easy fallout, and it wasn't merely a breakdown of a marriage. It was the dissolution of a lifestyle, a belief system, a family unit based on mutual love and togetherness. Robyn's leaving wasn't only tragic, it was laden with years of accumulated bitterness, unspoken realities, and emotional carnage. Red-rimmed eyes, confused children, and as she cleaned out her belongings, Cody sat quietly by himself, gazing out over the vacant expanse toward Coyote Pass. A man finally confronting the devastation he had long refused to acknowledge. What do you do when the person you trusted most is the one who caused everything to fall apart? It didn't happen overnight. Sister Wives enthusiasts saw the cracks developing year by year. What had started as an expansive, loving family, 4 wives, 18 children, and one common goal, began to change the day Robyn came aboard. Initially, her arrival seemed to buoy Cody. He smiled, laughed, he relaxed when she was present. Meri, Janelle, and Christine attempted to roll with it. They told themselves it was merely new wife vibes, that it would balance out, but it didn't. In time, the preference became certain. Robyn's children received extra presents at holidays. Her home was the first to be renovated, decorated, and fully equipped. Cody slept over there more nights than at all the other wives put together. Janelle and Christine gradually backed away. Meri, being the good, loyal one that she was, held on a bit longer than she should have, perhaps thinking things would change. While all of this was happening, Robyn's confidence only intensified. She became bolder, more prominent, and much less discreet about her place in Cody's life. And then came COVID. When crisis comes, it doesn't make character, exposes it, and for the Browns, it exposed it all. The pandemic brought out every shortcoming in the family dynamic. Under the guise of protection, Cody ceased traveling to see his other wives. He stayed mostly at Robyn's home. He set down strict rules that only seemed to apply to everyone except Robyn. The others became exasperated. The double standard was evident, and the trust began to come undone altogether. Christine was the first to say enough. She packed up her belongings, left Cody, and began anew with her now husband David Willie. Janelle wasn't much behind. And even the quiet sufferer, Meri, finally said she was finished waiting around for a man who no longer looked at her. But Cody, he blamed fingers everywhere except Robyn. Blamed the media, society, his children, even his other wives. Never did he blame Robyn, until today. Because in the end, even the kids couldn't help but notice the change. The children knew. They always knew, and once they began to speak up, all changed. Janelle's sons, Garrison and Gabriel, did not remain silent. They complained of feeling abandoned, of the way their father seemed to fade into Robyn's universe and forget about the rest of them. Even daughters from Cody's previous marriages were beginning to step back, resentful of how little time he spent with them. Meanwhile, Robyn's friends' children began to feel the weight of judgment. They felt the rift, the tension he seemed to create when they were around. Robyn's own defensiveness increased, her guard being much higher, and then the spark was lit. Cody's money reached rock bottom, maintaining multiple residences, loans, and that notoriety at Coyote Pass. It was too expensive. Robyn made a soft proposal: sell the other wives' houses and hold on to theirs. It was her way of keeping them comfortable, but to everyone else it was betrayal. And when one of the older kids shared that gossip with the rest of the family, that was it. The damage was done. And so Cody convened a family meeting. When, at last, a father summons his family to gather, not to defend, but to confess, what follows can shatter everything. On a somber July evening, they'd all met at Coyote Pass. All of them, Robyn, Janelle, Meri, even Christine and her new husband. The children lingered in the background observing. The air was quiet. And then Cody said, "I was wrong." Silence, even the wind hesitated. His eyes were bloodshot, voice shaky. He addressed each wife. "I let this family disintegrate. I let my love for Robyn cloud my judgment. I hurt my children. I hurt all of you. I'm sorry." Robyn stood stock still, holding her youngest. Christine didn't blink. "You let her ruin us," she said. Cody didn't argue. "I know. And I'm owning it now." Then came the words no one thought they'd ever hear. He glanced at Robyn. "I think it's best if you and your children move somewhere else to reside, at least temporarily," Cody replied, his tone low but firm. "I have to rebuild what I've destroyed, and I can't do that with you around." Robyn stood there dumbfounded, her breath caught as though she'd been punched. You can't mean that," she breathed. But he did, and so the chapter was closed. In the weeks that ensued, the fallout rolled in quick. Moving trucks came. Neighbors gossiped from their front porches. Paparazzi stood on the street as Robyn packed her belongings and attempted to protect her children from the bright glare of it all. The same kids who had once been informed they were the hub of the Brown family now felt adrift, bewildered, even abandoned. Their mother, the favored wife, was no longer welcome. While all this was transpiring, Cody set to work, not on the family or property plans, but on himself. He arrived at Janelle's home and assisted in repairing the damaged fence at her rental property. No cameras, no publicity, just discreet effort. He visited Gabriel and Garrison, eyeballed them, and apologized. He took Meri to lunch, just the two of them, and for a change actually listened. He acknowledged how completely he had failed her. And perhaps most astonishing of all, he sat down with Christine and her new husband, David Woolley. Cody stared David straight in the eye and owned up he'd been jealous, petty, and blind to what Christine really needed. The first step toward healing is speaking the truth, and for Cody that meant confronting it all out loud. As for Robyn, she clammed up. For weeks, she wouldn't answer phone calls, skipped family gatherings, and wouldn't speak to the media. But silence has a way of fading. At last, she agreed to give a local interview. Tears filled her eyes as she protested. She'd been misunderstood. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said. "I just wanted my kids to feel safe and loved." She asserted she'd been forced out, not because of anything she'd done, but because the others couldn't deal with Cody loving her. But to others, her words rang false. Too little, too late, because by then the damage was done. And Cody. He wasn't going back. Without Robyn, he began to consider what sort of father, partner, and man he wanted to be, not the kind who tried to control everything, but the one who could finally acknowledge his own mistakes. He started reconnecting with his older children, grandchildren too. There were still awkward moments, of course. Wounds like theirs don't heal overnight, but he was there now, and attempting to. He even went to therapy with Meri and Janelle, not to repair the past, but to learn how to get on with it better. You can't redo the past, but you can show up to the future. And that's precisely what Cody attempted to do. Then the kids began to speak out. Aspen, Christine's daughter, spoke up first. "It always felt like we didn't matter as much," she explained. "Like Robyn's kids were the real family, and the rest of us were just extras." Leon, Meri's son, wasn't shy. She played the long game, and she won until she didn't. Even Robyn's own son, Dayton, confessed that things didn't seem quite right. "I love my mom," he said softly, "but I saw what was going on. I saw how much more attention we received. It didn't feel right." Robyn ultimately settled into a tiny rental on the outskirts of town. She kept to herself, stayed close to her children, and tried to find out who she was now without Cody by her side. Cody, on the other hand, didn't cut her off. He continued to spend time with her children, but let her know that his attention, his love, and his time were for all his kids now. Not one house, not one branch of the family. Favoritism destroyed them. Accountability could be what reunites them. What happened to Cody and Robyn is not just a tale of heartbreak or betrayal. It's a tale of waking up. For years, Cody blamed everyone but himself. He believed he could hold the family together with rules and force. But ultimately, it wasn't structure they required, it was respect. And in deciding to send Robyn away, in deciding on honesty as opposed to illusion, Cody finally began to rebuild. Not the ideal family he had envisioned, but a real one. One that had cracks and scars, but with truth as well. As for Robyn, perhaps she'll come to realize her role in all of it. Perhaps redemption awaits her too. Today, the Browns are not a slick, plural dream that they initially attempted to peddle, but they are more human now, and perhaps that is a better basis anyway. Christine and David are doing wonderfully in their marriage. Janelle loves her freedom and space, yet still co-parents in respect. Meri is even dating again, creating a life of her own choosing. And the children, they're gradually learning to trust their father once more. When Cody asked Robyn to leave, it wasn't because he was angry. It was the first true thing he'd done in years. For years, Cody Brown boasted of being the provider, managing 4 wives, a household full of children, and the nuanced world of plural marriage as if he were doing it in his sleep. From the earliest days in Utah to the move to Nevada and then Arizona, Cody reassured the family that these shifts would eventually bring them closer together. He had visions of constructing a single large home on Coyote Pass, somewhere where the whole family would reside in one building, the same way they used to back in the good old days. That vision, that never materialized. Instead, his family drifted into separate households, and the togetherness he once preached slowly unraveled. First Christine left, then Janelle, and eventually even Meri grew tired of waiting for things to get better. And as the family ties wore thin, so did the money holding it all together. Cody always thought he could juggle it all. But what happens when the bills pile up and the trust runs out? One of the largest drain on the family's budget was an old familiar one, Robyn. Whereas the other wives got by with small rented houses and small budgets, Robyn's house was another matter altogether. Expensively decorated, nicely furnished, and generously apportioned. Her place appeared untouched by the austerity everyone else underwent. And it wasn't only the house, private school fees, pricey holidays, non-stop upgrades. Robyn had a lifestyle world apart from the rest. And Cody, still smitten, never once said no. It wasn't missed. The other wives noticed, so did the kids. It wasn't favoritism, it was financial treachery, and ultimately someone had to say no. As the debt mounted for the family, Cody grew desperate. He did everything, borrowed money, sold stocks, and even attempted to renegotiate the Coyote Pass land contract. But it wasn't sufficient. And then, of course, there was the call from the bank. Robyn's mortgage was perilously near default. Cody had no choice. He needed assistance, and quickly. So for the first time in years, he called Meri and Janelle. In spite of everything, he figured they'd come through. After all, hadn't they always been the practical ones, the loyal ones? When you've got no other choices, you call the people who used to have your back. But sometimes they do too. Cody visited Meri first. He drove out to her secluded rental home on the edge of town, rehearsing what he'd tell her in advance. She answered the door, manners intact but wary. She invited him inside, asked if he wanted tea. He shook his head. Then Cody spelled everything out. He told her he was in trouble. The mortgage on Robyn's home was overdue. The bank was phoning. Could Meri assist? Meri sat quietly, palms together. When he finished, she didn't blink. Cody, I can't help you, she replied calmly. He opened his eyes, shocked. What do you mean you can't? We're still family. Meri breathed slowly. We were like family, but you drove me out a long time back. You made me feel like a stranger. You chose Robyn, every single time. And now you want me to dig you out so she can continue living in luxury. No, I won't do it. Her tone did not shake. Cody attempted to remind her of their past, of all they'd shared, but Meri refused to be swayed. You made your decisions, she said, showing him out the door. Now live with them. It wasn't bitterness, it was definitiveness. It was definitiveness. And Meri's denial spoke volumes Cody never wanted to hear. Still reeling, Cody turned to Janelle next. If anyone would get it, it'd be her. She had always been pragmatic and solution-oriented, but sitting across from her in her tiny kitchen, Cody could see it in her eyes. She wasn't the same woman who used to bear the family's weight. Please, Janelle, he said, I need you. If we don't do something now, Robyn and the kids will lose their house. Janelle cocked an eyebrow. Lend you money or give you some? Because honestly, you've never repaid me. Cody flushed. This time will be different. I swear. Janelle shook her head. No, Cody, I won't do it. You excluded me. You excluded our children. You picked Robyn every time. And now you expect me to bail you out while she continues living like a princess. I'm sorry, but no. He pushed back, claimed that it wasn't about Robyn. It was about the children. Everybody's got children. Janelle snapped. You just remembered most of them. That was all. Sometime, the ones you've forgotten are the ones who will remind you that trust cannot be repurchased. Cody departed Janelle's residence in silence. He remained seated in his truck for a great while, just staring at the wheel. The fellow who had thought he could do everything now had no choices left. Back home, Robyn called nonstop. He ignored the first several, then finally picked up. They both said no, he informed her. She gasped on the other line. What are we going to do? But Cody had no solution. Over the following days, Cody made some calls, friends, distant relatives, old business acquaintances. But his name was now on everyone's lips. No one wanted to be a part of it. Robyn became bitter, holding Meri and Janelle responsible for leaving them behind. But beneath her surface, even she could not deny, it wasn't their mess to clean up. A chilly night, Cody stood on the border of Coyote Pass. The wind nipped his face, and the land that was supposed to be where everyone came together now felt like a cemetery for his biggest hopes. There are times when life brings you to a halt, as you confront the wreckage you pretended wasn't there for years. For Cody, that time had finally arrived. It's ironic, isn't it? How some folks want you to save them, after faking for years that you don't exist at all. That's what Janelle's daughter, Madison, suggested when word broke of Cody's financial crisis. Her phrase wasn't tactful. Maybe if he'd been a father to all his children, not just Robyn's, he wouldn't be where he is. Meri's son, Leon, was even more blunt in stating the same idea. Choices have consequences. And with that, the firestorm broke out again. The tabloids, the fan gossip, the paparazzi shots. It was all above board. When your children begin speaking truth to power, you know the fantasy is broken, and there is no turning back. Outside Robyn's house, paparazzi buzzed like bees to honey. Images appeared of moving boxes, lengthy emotional phone calls, and tear-stained faces. Next was what many fans referred to as Robyn's public meltdown. The woman who always seemed to maintain her calm, even under intense scrutiny, finally cracked. One afternoon, cameras caught her sobbing in the driveway, yelling into her phone. You promised me this would never happen, she cried, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Cody pulled up minutes later, looking exhausted and broken. He tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away, mumbling, everyone was right about us. when denial cracks and reality comes rushing in. It's not just heartbreaking. It's undeniable. That was Cody's turning point. Seeing Robyn's kid so lost, so uncertain, was it? He couldn't continue playing make-believe any longer. He hadn't simply made a couple of errors. He'd failed, not only with finance, but as a husband, a father, a man. He'd ignored the ones who cared for him most, allowed his passion for Robyn to keep him from seeing anything else. And now there was nothing to do but confront it. Sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. It's the point when you finally tell the truth to yourself. In for a dime, in for a dollar. And out of money, Cody made a choice that was overdue. He didn't request cash this time. He requested forgiveness. He requested a family meeting at Coyote Pass. And this time everybody showed. Meri, Janelle, Christine, the children. Even David Willie, Christine's new husband. They stood there, both of them, under the Arizona blue, each with questions, each with doubts. Cody stood before them, no longer a patriarch, but a man who realized he'd gotten it wrong. I failed you, he spoke softly. I allowed pride and ego to take over. I hurt all of you, and I'm sorry. The resulting silence was heavy. Then Janelle took a step forward. Sorry doesn't fix everything, she said. But it's a start. Meri nodded slightly. You've got a lot of work to do. Christine barely spoke, merely as soft. I hope you find peace. Even a couple of the children gave him tentative smiles, the kind that said, we're listening, but not ready yet. Forgiveness isn't easy, but when it comes, it begins small, one true word at a time. Robyn, though, wasn't ready to forgive. She was standing next to Cody, arms folded, sobs streaming down her face. You destroyed everything, she whispered. You said we'd be a team, and you picked them instead of me. Then she turned and left. Her children came behind her in quiet procession. Something shifted that night. The woman he'd guarded for so long ended up being the one who walked away. It was the weeks that followed that Cody started doing something different, something true. He sold Robyn's house and got an apartment that was smaller but decent. He took on odd jobs in order to begin paying off his debts. More significantly, he made space for all of his children, not just the ones who lived under Robyn's roof. He began therapy, sat down with Meri and Janelle to have actual conversations about trust, co-parenting, and what healing would actually mean. He even sat down with Christine and David and issued a sincere apology for how he'd acted toward her during their marriage. For the first time in decades, Cody Brown was learning humility, and with that came real growth. He couldn't remake the past, but he could begin to show up for the future. He discovered that love can't be purchased with grand houses or exotic getaways. That respect is not something you command, it is something you earn. That fatherhood doesn't divide into favorites. It's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient. And that being married means loving each wife equally, the same amount of time, the same amount of care. No favorites, no excuses. It wasn't simple and it wasn't ideal, but little by little things began falling into place. The family didn't return to its previous form, but perhaps, maybe just possibly, it became even stronger. Meri and Janelle forgave Cody a place in their lives, not as lovers, but as co-parents and wary friends. Christine and David continued developing their lovely new life, but they didn't close the door on Cody completely. They invited him in on birthdays, on holidays because of the children. Even Robyn eventually, and after careful consideration, contacted him. Not to reunite, but to be polite for her kids' sake. Cody Brown's tumble from public favor had been agonizing to behold, but it also brought a reckoning. Because when Meri and Janelle said no, they weren't saying it out of meanness. They were establishing a boundary that finally caused Cody to gaze into the mirror. Sometimes losing everything is what it takes to know what really matters, and to battle for the family that was always there. As the voices fought and feelings ran hot, the cameras inexplicably captured a moment of silence that would raise its own tempest. Standing over to the side, Robyn's teenage daughter, Brenna, broke into tears. Her voice trembled with emotion as she wailed, "You all are being so cruel to my mom. She's just trying to hold the family together. Why can't you just not be so hateful and love each other?" The room stood still. For once, even the producers off camera were taken aback. When a child has a meltdown on camera, it brings everything to a halt. But for this household, it opened the floodgates. Social media went crazy within hours of the show airing. Brenna's tearful meltdown went viral. Videos of her crying circulated like wildfire. Fans immediately started calling her Little Robyn, Robyn 2.0, and even crying Brenna. One tweet joked, "Brenna got that tear duct gene strong. Robyn must have passed down the ability to cry on command." Another joked, "Oh great, another generation of emotional manipulation. Sister Wives, the sequel." Instagram lit up with side-by-side memes of Robyn and Brenna crying, captioned with lines like mother, like daughter, and someone get these two a tissue sponsorship. It was relentless, and sometimes downright cruel, innocence or manipulation. Social media had already ruled, and the judgment wasn't kind. Some watched in defense of Brenna, stating she was only a child responding to raw emotion. Others were not so kind, insisting her actions demonstrated the depth to which Robyn's influence had taken over her children. Insiders close to the family confirmed that Brenna had always been sensitive and ruthlessly protective of her mom. She grew up seeing Robyn weep through fight after fight. For Brenna, Robyn wasn't a villain. Robyn was a woman trying to keep a shattered family together. One source said, Brenna's cried herself to sleep more times than you can count. She's learned that showing sadness gets attention, and that tears indicate that you care. Behind the viral video was a teenager growing up in emotional fire, learning to cry because it's what she knew. Cody's response was quick. Watching the segment and reading the backlash online, he took producers aside and announced, jaw clenched, "That's my daughter, and I won't let anyone bully her. She's braver than half the people ridiculing her from behind a screen." Later on Instagram, he wrote, "Brenna is a kind, sensitive soul who adores her family. If that's something to ridicule, then shame on you." Robyn, naturally, was heartbroken. In a tearful second interview, she stated, "When people attack my baby for sticking up for me, it tears me apart. She's suffering because I'm suffering, and now they're turning her into a villain also. I don't understand people being so mean." Looking directly into the camera, she pleaded, "Leave my children out of this. If you've got a problem with me, fine, but don't punish my kids for loving their mom." Robyn had always cried for herself, but now she was crying for her daughter, and this time even fans hesitated. But her plea didn't stop the wave of criticism. Others said she was old enough to be held responsible for inserting herself into a grown-up fight. Others stated that Robyn had taught her daughter how to weaponize emotion, to cry her way out of a problem rather than meet it head-on. On Reddit, a commentator posted, "If Robyn did not cry every 5 seconds, perhaps her daughter would not think that how issues get resolved." Another posted, "Sorry, but if you teach your children that manipulation is love, you don't get to be outraged when people point it out." Even among the Brown family, there were those who disagreed. Christine, who has taken on a less combative role in the family, sympathized. "She's just a kid. She doesn't deserve it," she said in an interview. "I don't agree with the way Robyn does things, but Brenna shouldn't be in the crossfire." Janelle, however, was more direct. "This is what happens when you raise children to think the world's against them. Teaching your children to cry and blame everybody else does not prepare them for life." Meri remained silent in public, but sources indicated that she rolled her eyes during the episode. The sister wives were silent together, but not silent in sympathy. Brenna's tears reopened old scars. Even the kids weighed in. Gabriel, Janelle's son, is said to have informed Pales, "We all experienced things, but you don't see us bawling on camera every 5 minutes. Brenna needs to harden up." Madison wrote on Twitter, "People need to stop bashing her, but somebody needs to teach her that crying doesn't solve everything." Dayton, Brenna's older half-brother, kept it somewhat more mysterious. "Sometimes, silence is more powerful than tears." When the next generation spoke up, one thing was evident. Brenna was not alone, but she was not invincible either. Dramatic tension mounting, Cody convened yet another family meeting at Coyote Pass. They all attended, Christine and David with their children, Janelle and her sons, Meri sitting silently, and Robyn, who last of all arrived with Brenna holding onto her arm. Cody did not hesitate. He demonized the online trolls and called for the family to stand as one. "We can fight amongst ourselves," he announced, "but we don't let strangers attack our children." Christine nodded, but responded softly, "Cody, no one here heard her. But we can't police the internet. What we can do is teach Brenna how to deal with this better." Janelle said, "If you want the mocking to cease, perhaps cease instigating the crying every time things become difficult. Teach her to defend herself." Robyn, predictably, collapsed once more, accusing the group of blaming her for making her daughter hurt. Brenna cried too, only this time something changed. She wiped away her tears, stood up straight, and surveyed the circle of family faces. And then, through tears, Brenna discovered her voice, one that no one had ever heard so clearly before. "I love my mom. I love this family." Brenna spoke softly, still trembling with emotion in her voice. "When people hurt her, it hurts me too. Maybe I don't always know the right way to show it, but at least I feel something for a moment." The room was as silent as it ever was. Even those who had been most dubious waited. Her words weren't accompanied by drama, only sincerity. And for the first time, it seemed like the family looked at Brenna not only as a crying child, but as a young woman seeking to make sense of a chaotic world. At that moment, Brenna's tears did not say weakness. Her tears said truth, and everyone listened at last. Since that family gathering, Cody and Robyn decided to get help for Brenna, not only to defend her against the cruel world outside, but to discover more clearly her own emotions. They put her in therapy, and Robyn worked with her to learn to communicate feelings without constantly crying tears. Gradually, Brenna learned other means to express what was in her heart. She created a private Instagram account, available only to family and close friends. On it, she started posting poetry and personal musings. In one of them, she wrote, "People say I cry too much, maybe they don't cry enough. At least my heart works." That single message resonated. Encouraging messages flooded in, and even some of her previous detractors began to appreciate her in a different light. Turns out the girl they taunted for crying had something actual to say after all. One by one, bit by bit, the tone of things online started to change. While some trolls continued taking shots, a large number of fans began defending Brenna. On Reddit, one comment gained traction. "We've been way too hard on her. She's a teenager in the middle of a family full of adults who can't get along. Give her a break." Others praised her bravery for speaking up, first through tears, then through writing. And while she may have reminded them of Robyn at first, many noticed something different. Brenna was finding her own voice. Her sobbing tirade had become more than a flash of television drama. It was a reminder of all that Brown children had endured. They weren't actors on a show. They were flesh and blood individuals raised on television, caught up in their parents' wars and left to sort out the devastation. Yes, Brenna might have gotten her mother's emotionalness, but she also demonstrated something her mother didn't do often, a desire to become greater. The biggest, most emotional kids often become the toughest adults because they never shut down. The months that followed were still complicated, broken, yes, but still striving. Robyn remained fiercely guarding Brenna but made a conscious effort to rein in her own meltdowns. Teddy, much to everyone's surprise, took a more subdued place, no longer insisting on inserting himself at the center of every family gathering. He allowed the women and children to sort themselves out and then entered only by invitation. And Brenna, she started taking courses at the community college. It got around that she wants to learn about psychology, so maybe someday she can assist other children who grow up in dysfunctional families like her own. Her Instagram, still private, sometimes leaks a little of her progress. In one shot, she's smiling. The caption is, "Still crying sometimes, but also laughing now. Learning it's okay to be both." Brenna isn't resisting. She's learning how to get through it, and perhaps that is precisely what this family requires. The tale of Brenna and her tears is not about crying at all. It is about how we treat young people who show pain and how quickly we transform empathy into entertainment. It's simple enough to ridicule a teenager who breaks down on television. Simple enough to liken her to a mother the internet enjoys picking on, but only part of the story. Behind the tears is a girl who has borne her mother's hurt, her father's absence, and the burden of 1,000 judgmental remarks from strangers who don't know her. And while she's still crying, yes, she's also healing, learning, and showing that emotion isn't a weakness. Perhaps, Brenna will be the one who shows them, all her parents, her siblings, and that one individual who has been the ast of their disapprovals. That feeling deeply isn't to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of.